Well, it's a different approach to family. Author David Coate is telling parents that in order to raise happy, successful kids, they should be thinking marriage first. He's outlined his methods in a book called To Raise Happy Kids, Put Your Marriage First. David Coate is here this morning with suggestions and answers because we had some of our viewers going with some questions. So what's the premise behind the book? I mean, put your marriage first as opposed to kids. Is that kind of opposite to what we've been thinking for quite some time?
I would say so, yeah. It seems these days that parents are marrying their children instead of their spouses. And that's a lose-lose proposition. Well, because already it's not good for the marriages, that's pretty obvious, but also the kids. It puts them in an uncomfortable position where they have to like grow up and be an adult best friend to these parents instead of just being kids.
Is it kind of a lead by example scenario? I mean, if parents see happy, functioning if kids see happy, well-functioning parents, that then will trickle down to them?
That's a big part of it, absolutely. Obviously, happy parents raise happy kids. And if parents are involved in a marriage that's working well for them, they're going to be happy. So there's a trickle-down effect, a ripple effect through the family. But also, you're right, we're setting a long-term example for those kids so that they can be happy in their future marriages coming down the road. Children, as you know, pick up on everything. Right. And they also learn by example. They do what we do, not what we say. And so if you can get kids on the right track by setting a great example, you're 80% there as a parent.
I mean, it's simple, really, because if you turn that around, because of the amount of time they spend on kids, they neglect each other. So you've got three rules, and I'm talking about the couples tend to neglect each other a little bit. So you've got three kind of rules about this. What's the first one?
Well, the first mistake, the most common mistake that parents make is believing that the more attention we give our kids, the better they turn out. And I think we're caught up now in trying to create these, it's almost Freudian, to create these perfect trauma-free childhoods so our children grow up without trauma. It's impossible, it's exhausting, and it kills the marriage because you're so focused on the kids and trying to befriend the kids that the marriage suffers. And as I said, that trickles down and everybody suffers.
All right, what's the second one?
The second one is distancing from your spouse. Now, most couples worry that if they argue, that's going to lead to divorce. And sure, it doesn't feel good when we trigger our fight response and we're arguing. That's a bad feeling. But keeping the peace is not the way to go either, because it's actually our flight response, not our fight response, but our flight response that is the silent killer of marriage. Now, what I mean by that is we don't realize it, but all the time when we're keeping the peace, we may actually be fleeing our spouse in disguise. When we avoid discussing touchy topics, when we work long hours at the office, when we switch on the TV, or today's favorite, when we throw ourselves into parenting our children and forget about our spouse.
All right, now you have a third myth, which is make sure you have time for yourselves emotionally and make an appointment for sex, is what you're saying.
Exactly, yeah. Again, there's this myth, we believe this crazy myth that sex has become optional in marriage. A lot of sexless couples will say, oh, well, you know, I don't really miss the sex anyway, and they say it's better to co-sleep with their children because that helps their children's development, or they're just so exhausted at the end of the day of giving all to their children. But they don't realize that 5 years from now, they're going to wake up, look across the pillow at their spouse, and realize that the flame has died, and then you either call your attorney and file for a divorce or have an affair.
All right, now I want to go to one of our questions. We've got time for one question from this is one of our viewers, Lori. Her question is, how do you find balance when your kids are so little that they need constant attention?
Well, that's the thing, is we believe they need constant attention. Some of the best times we have in our household is when we have friends over, and it's this strange thing, it's almost primal, where when the grown-ups are talking and having fun and laughing together, the kids tend to play off by themselves in a group, and they have this kind of gurgling, blissful emotion around them. They seem to be content when the grown-ups are content. So I think we're making a mistake thinking that it's our job to be the activity leader and to provide everything for our kids all the time.
David, thank you for this. Appreciate it this morning.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.